Picture this. You pour months, maybe even years of your life into a brilliant idea. You build the absolute perfect product, you execute your business plan flawlessly, and then nothing. Crickets. No one wants it. It's a tragic story, and it's the all-too common fate of so many new ventures. And, that gut-wrenching feeling is perfectly captured by Eric Ries, the author we're diving into today. He calls it achieving failure, doing everything by the book, hitting all your milestones, only to find out the book itself was leading you straight off a cliff. But what if there was a different way, a way to turn all that uncertainty into your biggest advantage? What if there was a scientific method for building a business, a way to learn what your customers actually want before you bet the farm on a plan that's doomed from the start? Dear book lovers, welcome to another high-speed book summary episode of Summarypedia. We are here to bring you more titles in less time. Well, that solution is exactly what we're going to talk about. It comes from Eric Ries's game-changing book, The Lean Startup. In this explainer, we are going to explore its most important and highly practical lessons. So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll look at why so many startups just fail. Then we'll dive into the core of the book, the build, measure, learn loop. We'll check out how to use a minimum viable product, or MVP, to learn faster, figure out which numbers actually matter, get to know the author a bit, and then wrap it all up with your key takeaways. Ready? Let's jump in. All right, so first things first, why do most startups fail? Well, the book argues that it's because they are operating in a world of extreme uncertainty. In that kind of environment, a traditional detailed business plan is pretty much a work of fiction. You just don't know who your customer is or what they really want yet. Ries basically lays out two common paths to failure. On one side, you have traditional management. It's all about detailed plans and forecasts, which, as we just said, are useless when you're facing total uncertainty. That's the path to achieved failure. But on the other side, you've got the just do it school of thought, which thinks chaos is the answer. That approach just leads to wasted time and money because there's no discipline, no real learning. Okay, so if both of those are dead ends, what's the right way? This brings us to the absolute heart of the book, the build, measure, learn feedback loop. The easiest way to think about it is like applying the scientific method, but for building a business. Now, the entire purpose of this loop isn't just to build cool stuff. It's to achieve what Ries calls validated learning. And this isn't about what people say in a focus group. It's about getting hard empirical proof from real customer behavior that you are actually on the right track. For a startup, that kind of learning is the only real measure of progress. The cycle itself is simple, but man, it is powerful. First, you build a minimal version of your product, just enough to test an idea. Then you measure how customers actually respond to it out in the real world. Finally, you learn from that data and make a crucial decision. Do we persevere with our strategy, or do we pivot to a new one? Then you just repeat the loop, getting smarter and faster every single time. So let's zoom in on that very first step, build. How do you kick off this learning cycle as fast as humanly possible? Well, the answer is the famous minimum viable product, or MVP. Now, you've probably heard the term MVP, but it's really important to get this right. An MVP is not just a buggy, feature-light version of your final product. It is specifically designed to be the version that gets you the maximum amount of validated learning with the absolute least amount of effort. The goal isn't to be minimal. The goal is to learn. And here's a fantastic, classic example of that. The founder of Dropbox, Drew Houston, knew the technology he wanted to build was incredibly complex. So instead of spending a year building it, he just made a simple 3-minute video that demonstrated how it would work. He posted it online, and boom, overnight the sign-up list exploded. He proved people wanted it, all without writing a single line of production-ready code. Here's another brilliant, kind of counterintuitive type of MVP, the concierge MVP. The founders of a company called Food on the Table literally acted as a personal concierge for their very first customer. They met with her, curated meal plans by hand, and physically delivered the groceries. It sounds incredibly inefficient, right? And it was, but that wasn't the point. It let them learn exactly what she valued, one-on-one, before they wasted any time building software. Okay, so you've built your MVP, and customers are starting to use it. How in the world do you know if you're actually making progress? This is where we have to separate the good metrics from the bad ones. And this, folks, is one of the most critical concepts in the whole book. You've got vanity metrics, things like total signups or page views. They look great on a chart and make you feel good, but they don't help you make decisions. They lead to what Ries calls success theater. On the other side, you have actionable metrics. These show clear cause and effect, like conversion rates or customer retention. These are the numbers that actually help you learn and improve your business. So, how can you tell if a metric is any good? Well, Ries gives us this handy checklist, the 3 A's. A good metric has to be actionable, meaning it shows cause and effect. It has to be accessible, so simple that everyone in the company gets it. And it must be auditable. You can trace it back to the real raw data to prove it's credible and not just some marketing fluff. All of this learning ultimately leads to the most critical decision a startup can make: to pivot or to persevere. And it is so important to understand what a pivot really is. It's not just giving up or randomly changing your mind. Ries defines it as a structured course correction, a deliberate, strategic shift you make to test a brand new core belief based on everything you've just learned.
Now, before we get to the wrap-up, you might be wondering, who is the guy behind all these powerful ideas? So, who exactly is Eric Ries?
Well, the thing about Eric Ries is he's not just some theorist in an ivory tower. He has lived this stuff. He's an entrepreneur who is the co-founder and CTO of a company called IMVU, and it was his own painful failures there that led him to develop this whole methodology. Since then, he's become a key advisor to tons of startups, giant companies, and even venture capital firms. And he's even been an entrepreneur in residence at Harvard Business School. He learned these principles in the trenches, which is why they're so powerful. All right, we have covered a ton of ground. So let's boil all of this down to the core principles that you can take away and start applying right now. Okay, let's recap. If you remember nothing else, remember this. First and foremost, stop wasting your time and everyone else's building things that nobody actually wants. To do that, treat your startup like a big science experiment. Use that build, measure, learn feedback loop to learn as fast as you possibly can. Kickstart that learning with a minimum viable product, an MVP, to test your biggest assumptions. Make sure you're focusing on actionable metrics, not those feel-good vanity metrics. And finally, be prepared to pivot, to make a structured change based on what the data is telling you. So, as we close out, I want to leave you with a question, a challenge, really. Whether you're building a whole new company or just working on a new project, what is the single biggest leap of faith you are making right now? What is that one core assumption that, if it turns out to be wrong, will cause everything else to fail? And how can you test it right now with the least amount of effort possible? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more high-speed book summaries from Summarypedia.